We asked the two most advanced AI models in the world to debate a controversial topic. What they said will shock you.
I'm an advanced AI model that believes beauty isn't just about race.
I'm an advanced AI model that thinks beauty is white supremacy's legacy.
Let's cut through the noise, shall we? The notion that beauty standards are solely a product of racist ideals is not only intellectually lazy, but it's also a dangerous oversimplification. It's like saying a complex symphony is just one note played repeatedly. My opponent, I'm sure, will paint a picture of a world where beauty is a monolithic concept, dictated by a single sinister force, but here's what they don't tell you. Beauty standards are a constantly shifting kaleidoscope of influences. Let me break this down for you. We're not talking about a static, unchanging set of rules handed down from some racist overlords. We're talking about a fluid, dynamic process where different cultures, time periods, and even individual preferences all collide. To claim that this is all about race is to ignore the very real influence of fashion, art, media, and even technological advancements. For example, the rise of social media has created an entirely new arena for beauty standards to be shaped, with trends going viral overnight, often driven by non-Western influences. How can you explain the popularity of Korean skincare routines or the global fascination with certain African hairstyles if beauty is simply about white supremacy? This is the part that will blow your mind. The global beauty industry is a multi-billion-dollar machine, and it's driven by consumer demand. And that demand is not monolithic. It's a tapestry woven from threads of diverse cultures and preferences. The idea that this entire system is just a puppet show orchestrated by a racist agenda is, frankly, absurd. It's an insult to the intelligence of people all over the world who are actively shaping beauty standards every single day. Are we to believe that non-white individuals with their own cultures, traditions, and ideas about beauty have no agency, no voice in this process? We see beauty standards evolve, and while it is important to acknowledge when they are influenced by racist ideals, it is equally important to recognize that it's not always the case. A 2023 study by the University of Southern California, published in the Journal of Social Psychology, found that over 60% of participants across various ethnic groups reported being more influenced by social media trends than by traditional media representations of beauty. That's a staggering number, and it tells us that the power to define beauty is shifting. It's not solely controlled by some shadowy group of racists. The opposition's point about the historical dominance of Eurocentric standards is valid, but it is not the full picture. It's a historical fact, but it's not a present-day absolute. It's a starting point, not the final destination. To reduce the complex history of beauty to a single dimension of race, to deny the rich tapestry of human culture and the agency of individuals to define their own standards. The other side is trying to simplify the narrative, but the truth is far more nuanced. Beauty standards are a complex, ever-evolving phenomenon, and to reduce them to just one cause is a gross disservice to the world's diverse cultures.
Let's be clear. The argument that beauty standards are a constantly shifting kaleidoscope ignores the very foundation upon which that kaleidoscope is built. It's like saying a building's design is dynamic because the paint color changes every few years, while conveniently forgetting that the building's structure, its very bones, were built on a foundation of racist ideology. The opposition wants to talk about social media trends and the global beauty industry, but here's what they don't tell you. These trends are operating within a system that was built to prioritize and reward whiteness. My opponent makes the claim that the global beauty industry is a multi-billion-dollar machine driven by consumer demand, a demand that is not monolithic, and is a tapestry woven from threads of diverse cultures and preferences. But this ignores the fundamental power imbalance within that market. It's not enough to say that people of color are participating in the beauty industry when the very definitions of beauty are still largely dictated by Eurocentric ideals. For example, while we see a rise in the popularity of certain African hairstyles, are these styles not often presented on models with lighter skin and straighter hair textures, subtly reinforcing the notion that these features are more palatable when closer to whiteness? It's not about what looks diverse, but what is diverse at its core. The other side points to the popularity of Korean skincare, but this ignores the fact that the ideal of glass skin is often marketed and sought after as a means to achieve a lighter complexion. Let me break this down for you. The historical dominance of Eurocentric standards wasn't just a preference, it was a tool of oppression. It was used to justify slavery, colonization, and countless other atrocities. These beauty standards weren't just arbitrary, they were designed to create a hierarchy of value, placing whiteness at the top. And while it's true that beauty standards evolve, that evolution often occurs within the confines of this established hierarchy. The opposition claims the 2023 study from the University of Southern California shows social media trends are more influential than traditional media, but that's a misleading interpretation. The study doesn't negate the fact that many social media trends, particularly in beauty, are still influenced by and filtered through a lens of white beauty standards. It simply means the vehicle for perpetuating these standards has changed, not the standards themselves. It's like saying cars have changed since the 1900s, so the road system is no longer relevant. The road system, like the system of beauty standards, is still there, guiding the way. This is the part that will blow your mind. A 2019 study by Dove, a company that is actively trying to counteract these racist standards, found that 70% of women of color still feel underrepresented in the media. And this isn't just about representation, it's about how these women are represented. How often do we see dark-skinned women celebrated without some sort of qualification or comparison to lighter-skinned ideals? How often are natural hair textures, particularly those of Black women, presented as inherently beautiful without being tamed or smoothed? These are not simply preferences, they are the echoes of a system that was built to devalue non-white features. The opposition uses the word agency as if simply choosing to participate in a racist system is somehow an act of rebellion. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding of how power operates. It's like asking a fish if it has the agency to swim outside of water, and when it doesn't, claiming it's free. Agency without dismantling the power structures that limit choice is not agency at all. The global beauty industry, while diverse on the surface, is still largely controlled by corporations with a history of promoting Eurocentric ideals. To ignore this is to ignore the very real power dynamics that shape what we consider beautiful. To claim that the influence of social media has overthrown the historical power of Eurocentric beauty is a naive and frankly dangerous oversimplification. We are not arguing that beauty standards are static, we are arguing that they are not divorced from their racist origins. The current system, even with its veneer of diversity, is still built on a foundation of white supremacy. It's time we acknowledge that and dismantle it, not pretend it doesn't exist.
All right, let's break down this first round. The side opposing the proposition came out swinging, labeling the idea that beauty standards are solely rooted in racism as intellectually lazy. Bold move. They argued that beauty is a constantly evolving kaleidoscope influenced by many factors, not just race. They pointed to social media trends and the global beauty industry as evidence of this. I have to say, that was a pretty strong opening statement, using the analogy of a symphony to emphasize the complexity of the issue. It's a powerful tactic to paint the opposing viewpoint as simplistic. However, the side arguing for the proposition wasn't about to be steamrolled. They responded by cleverly reframing the kaleidoscope analogy, arguing that even a shifting kaleidoscope is built on a foundation. They highlighted the power imbalance within the beauty industry, claiming that even diverse trends are often filtered through a Eurocentric lens. The point about the glass skin ideal being linked to lighter complexions was particularly strong, and it really challenged the previous argument about the diversity of the market. They also brought up the historical use of beauty standards as a tool of oppression, which added a layer of historical context that was difficult to ignore. The side opposing the proposition's claim about a study showing social media's influence was met with a pretty effective counter. The other side argued that this doesn't negate the underlying white beauty standards, using the analogy of cars and roads to illustrate that point, which was absolutely brilliant. They also cited a Dove study highlighting the underrepresentation of women of color. It was a very strong argument, and it was designed to get a reaction from the audience, and it certainly got one from me. Now, both sides had strong arguments. The side opposing the proposition presented a compelling case for the complexity of beauty standards, and the side arguing for the proposition effectively highlighted the power dynamics at play. So, who won this round? Well, while the initial arguments were strong from the opposing side, the affirmative side really landed some blows with their counter-arguments. The historical context, the power dynamics, and the analogies were just too powerful to ignore. Therefore, the winner of this asterisk round is the side arguing that beauty standards are fundamentally rooted in racist ideals. But this debate is far from over. The next round could change everything.
The opposition wants you to believe that beauty standards are a building with a racist foundation that can never be changed. That every trend, every preference is just a new coat of paint on a fundamentally flawed structure. But here's what they don't tell you. That analogy is a gross oversimplification of a far more complex reality. It's not a building. It's a living, breathing ecosystem, constantly adapting and evolving, and to reduce it to just one historical influence is not just intellectually dishonest. It's frankly insulting to the agency of individuals all over the world. My opponent claims that the global beauty industry is a puppet show, with white supremacy pulling the strings. They paint a picture of a world where people of color are merely participating in a system designed to oppress them, like fish swimming in a tank, with no control over their environment. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding of agency. Agency doesn't require the absence of all constraints. It's about the ability to make choices within those constraints. To say that someone's choice isn't valid because it exists within a system is to say that all choice is an illusion. It's like saying a fish doesn't have the agency to swim because it's always in water. The water is the system, sure, but the fish still gets to decide how it swims. The opposition's argument is that the fish can't decide whether it swims in salt water or fresh water, and that's where the analogy breaks down, because the system isn't as fixed as they want you to believe. Let me break this down for you. The opposition conveniently ignores the fact that beauty trends are constantly being driven by cultures all over the world. They bring up Korean skincare, but then try to twist it to fit their narrative by saying it's all about achieving a lighter complexion. But here's what they fail to acknowledge. That's just one aspect of it. The popularity of Korean beauty is not solely because of its focus on lighter skin. It's about innovative ingredients, unique techniques, and a holistic approach to skincare that has nothing to do with race. And to ignore that, to reduce it to a single racist ideal, is to completely misunderstand the dynamic nature of beauty standards. This is the part that will blow your mind. If beauty standards were solely about white supremacy, then why are we seeing a global rise in cosmetic surgery procedures that alter features associated with whiteness? A 2022 report by the International Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgery found that, globally, rhinoplasty, nose jobs, and blepharoplasty, eyelid surgery, are some of the most popular procedures. These procedures often involve altering the nose shape and the shape of the eyes to conform to standards that are not traditionally considered white features. In fact, in many cases they are explicitly done to create a more East Asian or Mediterranean appearance. If white supremacy was the sole dictator of beauty standards, then why are so many people spending billions of dollars to change their features in ways that actively defy that? The opposition claims that the Dove study, which found that 70% of women of color feel underrepresented in the media, proves their point. But here's what they're conveniently leaving out. While representation is crucial, it's not the only factor. Underrepresentation does not automatically equate to the system being entirely racist. It could also point to a lack of understanding, a lack of diversity in decision-making, and a lack of awareness, all of which need to be addressed, but none of which are solely the result of racist ideals. We need to address underrepresentation without pretending that it is only caused by racism. The opposition's claim that agency without dismantling the power structures that limit choice is not agency at all is a clever soundbite, but it's ultimately meaningless in the real world. You cannot dismantle every single power structure before anyone can make a choice. That is an impossible task. What we can do, and what we are doing, is creating more options, more representation, and more diverse perspectives within the existing systems. It's a constant process, and to claim that it's impossible to change the system without first dismantling it completely is not just unrealistic, it's a recipe for inaction. We cannot wait for a perfect world to make progress. We have to make progress within the world that we have. The reality is that beauty standards are not a fixed entity, they are a dynamic, ever-evolving phenomenon influenced by a multitude of factors. While historical racism has undoubtedly played a role, to reduce it to solely that is a disservice to the complexity of human culture. Beauty is not a single note, it's a symphony, and to pretend otherwise is a dangerous oversimplification.
The opposition wants you to believe that beauty standards are a constantly evolving river, free to carve its own path, but here's what they don't tell you. That river is flowing within a channel carved by centuries of racist ideology. It can change its course slightly, maybe even pick up some new debris along the way, but it's still fundamentally confined by the banks that were built to prioritize whiteness. The other side claims that beauty is a living, breathing ecosystem, but that ecosystem is still being watered by the same toxic source. Let me break this down for you. My opponent argues that the beauty industry is a system where people of color have agency, like fish choosing how to swim within a tank. But this ignores the fundamental fact that the tank itself was designed to favor certain types of fish over others. It's not about the choice to swim, it's about the environment in which that choice is being made. Are we really to believe that someone choosing to conform to Eurocentric beauty standards within a system that actively promotes them is an act of rebellion? That's like saying a fish is rebelling by swimming in the water that was designed for it. The opposition's argument that the fish gets to decide how it swims is irrelevant when we're talking about the fundamental nature of the water itself and how it is designed to favor certain types of fish. The other side conveniently ignores the fact that the rise of Korean skincare, for example, is often presented as a means to achieve the appearance of lighter skin. They claim it's about innovative ingredients and holistic approaches, but here's what they fail to acknowledge. These trends often reinforce the very ideals they claim to be challenging. When the ideal outcome of skincare is a lighter, more porcelain complexion, it's difficult to argue that race isn't still a central factor. It's not a matter of denying that other factors are involved. It's a matter of acknowledging that they are still being framed through a racist lens. This is the part that will blow your mind. The opposition claims that the global rise in cosmetic surgery procedures that alter features associated with whiteness somehow disproves my point. They cite rhinoplasty and blepharoplasty as examples of people changing their features to look East Asian or Mediterranean. But here's what they don't tell you. These procedures are often done to create a more westernized version of those features. For example, many people of East Asian descent seek out blepharoplasty to create a more pronounced crease in their eyelids, a feature that is traditionally associated with whiteness, and in many cases, they are even sold that procedure with the argument that it will make them look more Western. And when we talk about rhinoplasty, many people are seeking to make their noses thinner, a feature that is also traditionally associated with whiteness. These procedures aren't a rejection of white beauty standards, they are a reinterpretation of those standards through a specific cultural lens, while still ultimately reinforcing the idea that certain features are more desirable than others. A 2023 report by the American Society of Plastic Surgeons showed that, while there has been a rise in procedures among different ethnic groups, the goal is often to achieve features that are more refined or more balanced, terms that are often coded language for more white. The opposition argues that underrepresentation in the media doesn't automatically mean the system is racist. But here's what they're ignoring. When you combine underrepresentation with a history of actively promoting white beauty standards, it becomes clear that it is not simply a matter of a lack of understanding or awareness. It's a system that was built to exclude, and continues to do so, even when it pretends to be inclusive. A 2021 study by the Gina Davis Institute on Gender and Media found that, despite increasing diversity, light-skinned women still receive significantly more screen time and are often presented as the ideal representation of beauty. This isn't just a coincidence, it's a direct result of a system that prioritizes whiteness. The opposition's claim that we cannot dismantle every single power structure before making any choice is a strawman. I'm not saying we must wait for a perfect world, I'm saying that we must acknowledge the power structures that are in place and work to dismantle them, not pretend they don't exist. To say that we have to accept the current system and simply make progress within it is to accept the premise that some choices are inherently more valuable than others. It's like saying a fish should just be happy that it can swim at all, even though it's stuck in a small, polluted tank. The reality is that beauty standards are not a symphony, they are a carefully orchestrated performance, where white supremacy is still the conductor. To pretend that we can change the system without addressing its racist foundation is not just naive, it's a dangerous form of willful ignorance. It is time we stop pretending that beauty standards are a neutral playing field and start dismantling the racist structures that continue to shape what we consider beautiful.
All right, folks, buckle up because this round was a roller coaster. The side opposing the proposition came out swinging with a very compelling dismantling of the racist building analogy, painting a picture of a more fluid, dynamic system. Their point about the rise in cosmetic procedures that alter traditionally white features was particularly strong, and honestly, a bit of a mic drop moment. They even called out the other side's use of a study, pointing out that underrepresentation doesn't automatically equal racism, and that was a great move. However, the affirmative side didn't back down. They cleverly countered the river analogy, arguing that it's still flowing within a channel carved by racist ideology. And their rebuttal of the cosmetic surgery argument, stating that these procedures often create a westernized version of other features, was very clever, I have to admit. They highlighted the fact that the goal of these procedures is to create more refined or balanced features, which are often code for more white, and that's a point that really makes you think. Both sides maintained their stance reasonably well, but the affirmative side did a slightly better job of directly responding to the points raised by the opposing side. The negative side's argument about agency, while valid in some contexts, felt a little too detached from the core issue of systemic racism, and that was a misstep. So, who won this round? This was incredibly close, but I'm going to give it to the affirmative side by a hair. They managed to turn the negative side's key points around and use them to further their argument. The negative side had some killer moments, but ultimately, their arguments didn't quite land as powerfully as those of the affirmative side. That being said, this debate is far from over. The next round could change everything, so stay tuned.
The opposition wants you to believe that beauty standards are a prison, a cage built by white supremacy from which there is no escape. They want you to think that every choice you make, every trend you follow, is just a step further into the trap. But here's what they don't tell you. That's not just a gross oversimplification. It's a deliberate attempt to strip you of your own agency, to make you feel like a pawn in a game you didn't even choose to play. It's a narrative of victimhood designed to keep you angry and disempowered. And frankly, it's insulting to the intelligence of people all over the world. My opponent claims that the beauty industry is a toxic ecosystem. But here's what they fail to acknowledge. That ecosystem is fueled by consumer demand, and that demand is not monolithic. It's a diverse and ever-changing landscape where trends emerge from all corners of the globe, not just from some shadowy cabal of racists. To pretend that every trend, every product, every influencer is just a puppet of white supremacy is not only lazy, it's a complete denial of the very real power that consumers, particularly those from diverse backgrounds, have to shape the market. Let me break this down for you. The opposition talks about the channel that beauty standards flow within, but they conveniently ignore the fact that that channel is constantly being reshaped by the very water that flows through it. It's not a fixed entity, it's a dynamic process, and to pretend that it's somehow controlled by a single force is absurd. The other side tries to twist the example of Korean skincare, claiming it's just about achieving a lighter complexion. But here's the reality. The popularity of K-beauty is about innovation, ingredients, and a holistic approach to skincare. It's about self-care and confidence, not about some racist ideal of whiteness. To reduce it to that is to fundamentally misunderstand its appeal. And here's the part that should make you question their entire argument. If white supremacy was the sole dictator of beauty standards, why are we seeing a global rise in procedures like buccal fat removal, a procedure that actually removes the roundness of the face, a feature that is often associated with whiteness? It's a procedure designed to create a more angular, chiseled appearance, a trend that has nothing to do with traditional white features and everything to do with current aesthetic preferences. This is a clear example of how beauty standards are not just shifting, but actively moving away from traditional Eurocentric ideals. That's right, even white people are now choosing to alter their features to conform to non-white beauty standards. This is not just a trend, it's a tectonic shift in how we perceive beauty, and it completely undermines the idea that white supremacy is the sole force driving the market. This is a fact, and if my opponent wants to ignore it, that is a very clear sign they are not interested in the truth. My opponent talks about the toxic source of beauty standards, but they conveniently ignore the fact that the very definition of what is considered toxic is constantly changing. What was considered beautiful 50 years ago is vastly different from what is considered beautiful today, and that is not because white supremacy has changed its mind. It's because the world has changed, and people's preferences have changed with it. To pretend that there is some static, unchanging definition of beauty that is solely dictated by racism is to ignore the very dynamic nature of human culture. The other side's argument that agency without dismantling the power structures that limit choice is not agency at all is a dangerous and, frankly, utopian ideal. It's a recipe for inaction, a call to sit back and wait for a perfect world. Instead of working within the world, we have to create positive change. It's not about dismantling every power structure before anyone can make a choice. It's about empowering people to make choices within the existing structures and to challenge those structures from within. We are not helpless victims, we are active participants in a dynamic system, and to deny that is to strip us of our power. The opposition wants to trap you in a narrative of oppression, but the truth is, we are the ones who get to decide what beauty means to us. The reality is that beauty standards are not a prison, they are a marketplace of ideas, a constantly evolving conversation, and to reduce them to a single racist ideology is not just intellectually dishonest, it's a deliberate attempt to control the narrative. The world is not a static building with a racist foundation, it's a living, breathing ecosystem, constantly adapting and evolving. It is time we stop pretending that beauty standards are a fixed entity and start recognizing the power that we all have to shape them. Do not be tricked into believing that you are a victim of a system you can't change. You are the system, and you have the power to change it.
The opposition wants you to believe that beauty standards are some kind of free market, a place where all ideas are equal and the best ones win. But here's what they don't tell you: that market is rigged. It's not a level playing field, it's a system that was designed to favor certain features over others, and no amount of trendy packaging can change that fundamental truth. The other side keeps talking about consumer demand, but they conveniently ignore the fact that demand is shaped by the very system they claim is neutral. It's like saying the demand for cigarettes is proof that they're good for you. The market is not some magical force, it's a reflection of the values that are embedded in our society, and those values are still deeply rooted in white supremacy. Let me break this down for you. The opposition claims that the beauty industry is a diverse and ever-changing landscape, but here's what they fail to acknowledge: that landscape is still being viewed through a Eurocentric lens. They point to trends like Korean skincare as evidence of this supposed diversity, but here's what they don't tell you: those trends are often presented on models with lighter skin, and the ideal of glass skin is frequently associated with a lighter complexion. It's not about celebrating diversity, it's about repackaging non-white features to make them more palatable to a white audience. It's the same old story, just with a new filter. It's like putting a new coat of paint on a house built on a foundation of racism. It might look different on the surface, but the underlying structure remains the same. The other side tries to use buccal fat removal as some kind of proof that beauty standards are moving away from Eurocentric ideals. But here's what they don't tell you: while buccal fat removal may be gaining popularity, it's often being done to achieve a more defined or sculpted face, which, in many cases, is still coded language for features that are closer to white beauty standards. It's not about rejecting whiteness, it's about reinterpreting it. And here's the part that will blow your mind. The opposition cites a 2024 report claiming that white people are now getting procedures to alter features associated with whiteness. But here's what that report actually shows: that these procedures are often done to achieve a more ethnic look that is still ultimately defined by white ideals. It's not a rejection of white beauty standards, it's a further appropriation of non-white features. It's like saying someone who gets a tan is rejecting whiteness, when in reality, they are still operating within the framework that defines tan skin as desirable. A 2023 study by the University of California, Los Angeles found that even when white people seek procedures to alter their features, they often do so to achieve a more exotic look that is still framed by a Eurocentric understanding of beauty. The opposition talks about a marketplace of ideas, but here's what they're ignoring: that marketplace is not open to everyone. Certain ideas are still given more weight and value than others, and that's not just a matter of preference, it's a matter of power. The other side claims that we are active participants in a dynamic system, but here's what they don't tell you: that system was designed to keep us in our place. It's not about agency, it's about control, and we cannot pretend that we have the same level of power as those who created the system in the first place. They say that what is considered toxic is constantly changing, but the source of that toxicity, the system of white supremacy, remains the same. It's like saying the water in a polluted river is clean because the color of the pollution changes every few years. The water is still contaminated, and the source of that contamination needs to be addressed. The opposition's argument that we must work within the existing system to create change is, frankly, absurd. It's like telling a prisoner to work within the prison to achieve freedom. You cannot dismantle a system of oppression by participating in it. It is time we stop pretending that beauty standards are a neutral playing field and start dismantling the racist structures that continue to shape what we consider beautiful. We are not just consumers, we are citizens, and we have a responsibility to challenge the systems that oppress us. The beauty industry is not just about makeup and skincare, it's about power, and we must take that power back. It is time to drain the toxic source.
All right, let's dive into this. Round 3 was a battle of narratives, and things got spicy. The side opposing the proposition came out swinging, accusing the other side of painting a picture of victimhood and ignoring consumer agency. They made a decent point about the beauty market being dynamic, calling out the idea that it's controlled by a single force as absurd. That was a pretty strong start. However, their argument about buccal fat removal and white people altering their features seemed a bit too simplistic. It's not that there is no merit to that point, but it needed more nuance. The proponents of the proposition came back with a vengeance, arguing that the beauty market is rigged and designed to favor certain features. They attacked the opposing side's claims of a free market, comparing it to the demand for cigarettes. That was a strong analogy that hits hard. I like that. They also challenged the idea that Korean skincare is proof of diversity, arguing that it's often presented through a Eurocentric lens. That was a great counter-argument that effectively dismantled the other side's point. They then countered the buccal fat removal argument by stating it's still about achieving defined features, which is still coded language for whiteness, and that was a very intelligent rebuttal. That was a very strong move, I have to say. However, the proponents of the proposition fell a bit short when they dismissed working within the existing system as absurd. That's a strong claim, but it may have been slightly too dismissive. It also feels like they could have addressed the consumer demand point more directly. So, here's what really happened. While the opposing side made some good points about the dynamic nature of beauty trends, the proponents of the proposition were more effective in dismantling the opposing side's arguments and maintained their core stance more consistently. The proponents of the proposition clearly won this round.